Awesome. So you've come here so far. It's really great that you could stick around to learn the Dart programming language. Now we learned about what are variables. We learned about what are functions in the section one of the Dart programming tutorial series. So today is going to be the section two. We're going to be starting with the section two, where we're going to learn the basics of classes. What are classes and how do you go forward with understanding them? Now we know that there are variables, there are functions, but where do you exactly put them? You could say that these could be standalone functions that are happening throughout a program of variable grade, but in Dart or other programming languages as well, there's a concept of classes which is going to structurally define how you're going to write your program. Now classes are going to be one place for you to put your functions, put your variables, so that it can actually appear as a little bit like a house. Now let's assume that this is the house that I'm living in right now, and there is the computer that right to my left, there's a computer to my right again, and all of these are going to be present inside the house. There's going to be another house that is adjacent to my place, and there could be anything inside that. Now what are they actually technically doing that? You're actually putting all these values, or example your numbers, your variables, your functions inside a boundary, and that boundary is going to be the class. Classes very tightly couple all of these things together so that it's very easy for anybody to write a program actually pointing towards that class. So that's what the basics of class is going to say, and that's what the basics of class does in Dart as well. In this slide again, I'm going to be talking about the very basics of classes only, nothing complex about it, just the basics of class and how do you take forward from here to learn other important concepts with respect to classes. If you're ready, let's get this video started.
Alright, so begin with classes again, like I told you, are structural definitions of where do you put or where do you bound together your functions and your variables. At the heart of it, that's the main use of that. Classes are just going to be acting as a boundary for actually accessing these values, like your variables, your functions, and that's what we're going to be seeing in this video as well. So what are the basics of classes? What else can it hold? It can hold a variable, obviously, it can hold a function. You could even hold a class itself, and these are called as local classes or inner classes. Representing classes is really simple. Just use the keyword lowercase class followed by the class name. You open and you close your flower brackets, and that's the definition of class. Now, as you can see to the right, I've written a simple sample class, open and close brackets, and we have just bounded a class with a class name called a sample class. How do you put an item inside the sample class? Now I've written a simple example again to the right. I've written a simple variable called as x equal to 10. I've also written a simple function called as sample function. Let's go back to our dart pad and start looking at how do you create a simple class. Let the main be there. We'll create a simple class. Let me call it a sample class, and let's open and close brackets here. And now let me create my first variable. Let's call it int of x is equal to 10, and let me create a simple function called a sample function, and I'm going to be creating the scope for that as well. So this is how you simply create a class. Now the class again is going to hold a variable, it's going to hold a simple function, and every single class that you see is going to do either of the two. It's going to have a variable or a function, and that's the most basic understanding of how class works. We have put element inside the class. So what's next? We're going to be seeing about accessing these members outside the class. Now the main use of a class is to actually give a structural definition. Like I told you, the structural definition is that the sample class is going to hold a variable x. This x cannot be actually present outside the class of the scope of this class. So what exactly I'm trying to say is that the class sample class can only hold the variable x, and nothing else can hold the variable x. Now this is actually very much local to this class only, and this value cannot change unless and otherwise this class actually requires this value to change. Now like I've actually put here, this idea is that you need to access the values of the class. Now how do you access the value of the class? Now I've written something here in the void main section. I've written that I'm going to create a var s is equal to sample class of, and I've just put the semicolon at the end. So what exactly does that mean? So what exactly that means is that we are going to be looking at creating an object for the class. Now I told you that every simple class is a structural definition. Now how do you access this structural definition unless you have a key to the house, right? So these are objects, nothing but simple key that is going to access your house, open the door for you, and let you go in and access the values inside that. Technically that's what the sample class object also does. So we can create a simple variable called as var s is equal to sample class off. So this off is going to be responsible, just like a simple function call. That's what you're going to do here. This is going to be responsible for creating something called as an object. Objects are nothing but the simple way to access a door or access a simple structural definition, which in our example is a class. It says that I need to give a upper camel case. Okay, I'm going to give an upper camel case, and let me do this as well here. So yeah, so we have a sample class object that's been created and stored in variable s. And now what is the use of this? Now we do have the a key for the house, and they can directly go in and say yes dot x, and the x is going to be pointing towards this variable. So what exactly are you doing is that we are actually buying a key to the house through this simple line, and using that key we are going and accessing the values inside this class. Now when you print this value, it's towards the right, it's going to say that the value is 10. That's awesome, right? And now let's go in and create a simple print here. Let's say that I am inside the class function definition, put a semicolon at the end, and now let's call the function, which is possible by again accessing the members, which is possible through our sample x. Now let's call the sample function. Just do the function notation again here and just print it. Oh, it says that the expression is void and can't be used. Oh god, what a simple mistake. Just do sample function alone, because it's not going to return anything. What's the use of printing it at? It should be by default printing that with console. Awesome, right? So it's printing the value 10, and it's saying that I'm inside the class function definition. So we are successfully handling the values inside the class, which is not possible otherwise. Unless you have a key to the class, which is the object in our example here, you can access these values. And that's how you simply create and access values inside a class. What are other things can you put inside a class? So there are a variety of things that you can do. You can actually not limit yourselves to just your variable and your functions. You could create a function of function. You could create a class inside that as well. But remember, everything inside the class, unless you have any other use of that, if you want to access them, you definitely have to create an object. In the next section or the next video series, we're going to be talking about the new type of classes, which is called abstract classes, that would not require any form of objects. But in this video or in this classes, by default, wherever you create, you definitely require an object, nothing but a key that is going to access the elements inside the class for you. Alright, so that's it. We did a great job. We looked at how to create a class. We also gave it a simple variable, also function, and did access all the elements inside the class. Alright, so now time to look at the summarization and close this video out.
Great job. We did learn about the dark classes in just under 10 minutes, which is very, very important. Hopefully, if you have understood the concept of classes, make sure to take loads and start practicing on that. Classes are really, really, really important, not just in Dart, in any other programming languages, because these are the fundamental blocks of the OOPS concept. So if you're going to be talking about classes in the next upcoming videos, make sure you understand what classes mean, because there are a lot of important sections that are coming up right in this video series, which are really importantly focused towards classes only. Let me meet you in the next video with something important on classes. Until then, peace out. Have a super awesome day.